Hello. This is my first time putting a theory of mine out there. This won't be the start of me making content, probably. I want to start this off with saying, this theory will be wrong. Yes, this prediction will be totally off. This whole concept, idea, everything, it will be far from what the game will have. Which is why I'm not gonna care too much that this whole thing is something Toby wouldn't do, because I am not Toby, of course, and even outside that, I'm not someone with a brain capable of writing good. Largely why I wanted to make this idea into a video is because I've never seen anyone talk about what I'll be presenting. So to lay out what this theory is about, firstly, it revolves around the Twisted Sword. Point number 2, Chris is a focal point. Number 3, the idea itself is about a third route that is only possible via the Twisted Sword. In case anyone doesn't know what the Twisted Sword is or needs a refresher, it's currently an unobtainable weapon that only Chris will be able to use. And from the game's code, we know as of the recording of this video, unless a buff or debuff happens, it's 16 attack and its effect is trance down. I want to really put emphasis on the trance down here. That's kind of the core of this theory. I'll explain what it entails in a minute. To make the sword, you need the Thorn Ring and a Pure Crystal. Thorn Ring is pretty easy to get, and Pure Crystal is not obtainable right now, but I think everyone and their friend can guess that that's what giving the Shadow Crystals to Sham will result in. In Chapter 4, he says only 2 remain, one being the one Gerson had, which you can give him by the end of Chapter 4, and most likely the one in Chapter 5. Unless Toby just decides to not put one there to delay getting the Pure Crystal and maybe inevitable Sham fight for either Chapter 6 or 7, but I won't be assuming that for this theory. You can do an aborted weird route and keep the ring. Once you get it from Spanton, you don't put it on Noel. And when you get to Birdley, say I'm protecting her from you, and things go back to normal. I could go on a separate talk about how that's weird and everything before gets ignored, but that's not what I'm here for. I'll just point it out. But after you get to keep it, and I'll show a screenshot from Chapter 4 from my game with having the Thorn Ring. That's all for how to quote-unquote get the sword, but that's presumably Chapter 5. As for how this affects Chris, I want to bring back the effect being a trance down. The Thorn Ring has the effect of trance up, and we see how that affects Noel. If you look up the opposite of trance, it has a lot of meanings, so to point out a few, like notable ones, wakefulness, reality, consciousness, liveliness, and activeness. Just a whole lot of nesses. My idea is through the sword, Chris becomes more expressive and even start overriding the player's options most of the time. I already know Chris can do this to an extent, but imagine that but shot to near 100. You know how whenever Susie is controlled by us, like in Chapter 4 in the Ferris wheel, she asks, what would Chris say? And picking either makes Susie reject the options and make her own. Think that, but with Chris. Chris would have all the benefits of the soul being around without the drawback of their body being taken away from them most of the time. Of course, you can still move them around, but picking things to come out of their mouth and how active they are during cutscenes, I would imagine it would be different. They wouldn't be as stiff, I would say. They'd gain most of their autonomy back. At least, it would be on a higher level. And the third point, let's talk about the third save slot in the game's menu. People don't talk about this anymore, but I think this actually is like relevant for what this theory is. I always thought, slot 1 is for normal route, 2 is for weird route, nothing strange there. But I always thought the third slot felt almost useless. I want to propose that the actual reason the third save is there is for what I'd call the Twisted Freedom route. And I'll address this route can only be a normal route, ultimately. Weird route on this path won't be possible since you can only be on this route via an aborted weird route. So while the normal route will be whatever ending will be, weird route will of course be a different result since that's the point of the route, and Twisted Freedom will be the same result as the normal route except the road is different. I couldn't think of how this route would change the ending because we don't know what the base ending would even be. Feel free to fill some holes on that front. Much like how you would do the weird route after doing the normal route, this quote-unquote secret third route would be done after the weird route. I'll be trying to make a sort of prediction of events. I will be assuming that the end of Chapter 5 is when you will obtain it, before the cliffhanger of Chapter 5. I will assume the Twisted Sword's effect will carry over to the light world, just like the Thorn Ring with Noel. So I don't think it's impossible to say the Twisted Sword will work the same way. As for the object it isn't a new concept, but it would be a wavy dagger. I'll pull an image on screen so you know what I'm referring to. What's cool is this exact dagger is called Chris, just like this wavy design for a dagger is called that. The same spelling as our Chris. You'd see an immediate difference starting from the cliffhanger of chapter 5. It wouldn't be big, it would be small and leave you wondering what'll happen next. Again, you'd have experienced the ending in the normal route, but in the Twisted Freedom route, you'd tell how Chris was in the cutscene was different, but not in the same way that was in the weird route. Where this route will really shine is chapter 6 and 7. After you do 5, or from 5, you get a little crumb to get you trying to think where this route would go. Enter chapter 6. Chris is in the Dark World, and you notice that Chris has a new magic menu. I'm gonna deviate a little bit here. I want to present a simple concept of what the Twisted Sword would do. The Thorn Ring reduces the cost of spells, and it gave Noelle a new spell, which was Snowgrave. I will also follow this formula. As for the damage tick per second the ring had, that would be removed because it would be purified from the ring being combined with the pure crystal. The effect of the sword is trance down, not trance up, which means to me, in that aspect, it got purified, and the negative was removed and instead made a positive. So who's to say the health tick wouldn't be removed? But it'll also mean instead there would be a healing tick per second free of charge. But for the sake of that being too overpowered, you would never die, I'll remove that and just say the health drain is removed. Well, you could die, but all you have to do is just sit in your menu and you get to full health. I think all this is great because we know Chris wishes they can use magic. The fun gang will definitely comment on this and think it's cool and ask why Chris never brought this to the table. And for the sake of this weapon not getting power crept, much like the mantle getting Shadow Mantle getting +1 defense every new chapter, I will say the Twisted Sword gets a +2 in magic attack and defense every start of a new chapter, starting from chapter 6, because you would have gotten it in chapter 5. In the Thorn Ring, I remember it gives attack, defense, and magic, so I also am gonna apply it to the sword. Things like I'm gonna skip a bit because again I'm not trying to create a full timeline. I can't like think of that many things. Things like the piano in the chapter 4 Dark World would happen more often, where they can let go of the player limiting their actions, but by the end, Chris shapes to be who they are without too much of the player affecting them outside of movement and performance in fights. Chris wouldn't start talking a lot. They would still be themselves, obviously, not like the talkative person who talks to everyone in the town. Noelle says Chris isn't like that, or it's not usual that they just talk to everyone. So they would still be who they are, but maybe they'd have a dialogue box. I'm a bit skeptical on that though. But if Susie or Rousey says they are smiling or laughing or yelling, it would be animated and not Chris being still while another character said Chris did this. Although this all won't bring a new ending, I think the road will be more satisfactory. It's more so a better ending for Chris, if anything. When sometimes you want to pick dialogue options Chris would say or Chris would want to say? Well, this route would be the incarnation of that desire. I understand this route might be kicking the player in the face and shooting them 50 times by basically making them less important or like less there. But you are expected to have done the normal route and the weird route. If you want your importance, you got that in 2 out of 3 routes in the game. Your aim is making things better for Chris this time around. Plus, you're the angel. You're important regardless. Maybe at the very end, like how you talk with Flowey after Undertale's credits, you would talk to Chris after Deltarune's credits, and it would only be there if you did this 3rd route. Maybe this is a stretch, but maybe for fun. Because you'd have done the 2 routes prior, you'd tell Chris about previous saves and how you, the player, did this one in search for a better time for Chris. Of course, they'd forget it when a new save is open. Of course, they don't remember it. And that's all for the theory. To be honest, the Twisted Sword isn't a much talked about topic, especially now. It's a desert when it comes to it. I only hear base level ideas and not branch it into something. So I had the motivation to create this. I wouldn't want to make a theory and 99% of it being already out there, as far as I would know. If you watch all the way through, thank you, genuinely. I can't wait to come back to this theory when new chapters come out and pat myself on the back and give myself a big I told myself so for it being wrong. But really, I just want to spark new discussions between people and maybe inspire a person or two to want to upload their own theory for people to see. We only have 1 year for theories this time around, so just have fun. If you want to have your 2 cents on this idea, go ahead. If it'll be in the comments, I'll respond to every single one. This might be the only video on my channel. Maybe I'll record myself playing chapter 5.